Hello. I look a mess. I feel a mess. I smell bad because I was just taking a shower and the water smells bad. I don't know. My life is a disaster right now, which kind of segues into what I want to talk about today. I feel like I don't talk a lot about myself on this channel other than I guess through song. But I wanted to talk about something I think is really important and I think is not talked about enough, and that is what I like to call slightly gifted syndrome. So you hear a lot about gifted kid syndrome and gifted kid burnout and a lot of stuff like that, where you hear about kids who were gifted growing up, encountering a task that they can't do and just crumbling. And I think that is very relevant, and I think that is very important to talk about. And I think the expectations that you place on gifted kid needs to be considered. But I want specifically to talk about people like me, which is like the slightly gifted kids. And I like to say, my parents didn't think that I was gifted. They thought I was just an overachiever, and they were on the DL about it, but that's what they thought. And I think that kind of was the start of kind of how it kind of played out. So a little bit about me. I didn't get placed in the gifted program until, I'm not going to eat this orange while I'm talking, so I'm going to just put it over there. I didn't get into the gifted program until my 5th grade year, and a lot of the kids that were in the program with me had been in it since kindergarten. So and what this resulted in was complete isolation from both groups, because now I was too smart for the normal kids and too dumb for the smart kids. And so I was trapped in this limbo where I kind of had thrown my lot in with the gifted kids, but I didn't really fit in there. And I ended up going to a magnet program for gifted kids for middle school. And it was one of the most challenging and rewarding and worth it and terrible decisions I've ever made. I honestly don't know who I would be if I had not made that decision. It was incredibly formative in the way that middle school can be, but I think especially so for me. And I think that a lot of the things that I experienced were definitely amplified by mental health issues and self-esteem issues. But I think fundamentally, the issue of it is the same, which is that when you are around a lot of, the people you are around form your worldview, your perspective. And when you are around a lot of incredibly smart people and you are not at that level, it creates this horrible sense of shame and this imposter syndrome that really just never goes away. And so it's you feel like there's something wrong with you because you can't keep up with them. You feel like you can't complain because they have it so much. They're doing everything you're doing, but 4 times harder. And I think that creates just this innate sense of shame, because it's I have the general opinion that if you're going to complain to someone, they need to be better off than you. This, in kind of a general sense, a more casual example of this is, I don't want people to complain to me about being short if they're taller than me. Kind of just the perspective of who you're talking to. So whenever you are a slightly gifted kid who excels in some areas incredibly well, but really struggles in others, and you are in classes with people who that subject is their specialty, and the teacher has moved on before you even realize you have a question because you're surrounded by these people, and you just feel like there must be something wrong with you because you're not keeping up, because you can't get it. And I think that as much as gifted kids have it hard with burnout, I think slightly gifted kids kind of have it worse, because it's instead of everything coming easy to them, maybe it's 1 or 2 subjects coming really easy to them, and then desperately trying, constantly struggling for everything else. And you feel well, I'm definitely not part of the normal group because I really excel at these things and I'm really quick at learning these things. But I'm also not good enough to be up here with these people because I can't do these things. And so you're left in this awkward limbo where you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel like a burden because you feel like you can't really fit in with either group. And so you feel like you just kind of are a problem. And it's so difficult, especially whenever you're really struggling, to feel like there's somebody that you can talk to about it. Because I know for me, that's still happening. I'm still surrounded by these incredibly smart, talented people, and it's definitely changed my view of what is normal. Because my version of normal is those people who are handling everything perfectly and doing all these things. And like right now, I am having such a hard time. I am struggling. I am barely keeping up with everything that I need to be doing. I'm not balancing it well. I'm just not having a good time right now, and I'm drowning. And I feel like I can't really talk about that other than in general terms of, oh, I'm having a hard time right now. And I keep having to remind myself that my worldview and my surroundings are not normal. And also that I have extenuating circumstances. I think generally, like, I didn't realize how, I guess, advanced my groups were until I went to a theater competition my 8th grade year in middle school. And my middle school was known for theater. Our theater was intense and crazy for a middle school, like high school level performances in a middle school. It was crazy. We did a play about the Holocaust and everyone died. We did a play about the Troubles in Ireland. Like, we were super excessive. And so we were a theater school. And so I didn't realize that. I didn't realize, because I was struggling. I wasn't really getting any leads because I was not good at improv. And the section of people that I ended up being in classes with were really good at improv. And so I would learn all my lines and do everything I was supposed to do as a studious person invested in acting, but then I would often get thrown under the bus for not being able to carry the scene along because my scene partner just wouldn't learn their lines. And so I was really struggling, and I had convinced myself that I was bad at theater and that I was bad at acting and that I was bad at this thing that I really loved. And then I went to this competition with everybody in the whole district. And I performed 2 monologues and a solo song. And I got to watch the other people perform theirs. And I think it was an awakening for me of, oh, I can do this. My surroundings aren't normal. And I think I tried to hold on to that whenever I would feel like I could barely keep up with, say, in high school, 2 AP classes and 5 normal ones. Meanwhile, I knew people who were in 5 AP classes effortlessly getting A's. And those were the people I was friends with. I was friends with the people that hung out with the valedictorian. I was friends with the salutatorian. I was friends with all of the people that advanced for the SAT placement, getting like incredibly high scores. And I was surrounded by those people, and I was convinced that was normal, and therefore had convinced myself that I was bad at it because I wasn't at their level. And it is so difficult to bring yourself out of that because you can't change who you're friends with at a certain point. And it's hard to remove yourself from that worldview. And I think this is a silly thing, but this is what helps me, and what I've been trying to get myself into the habit of now is, yes, what Fred Astaire does is incredibly impressive. That is that word is just, it's not wording today, but what he does is incredible. But what Ginger Rogers does is even better, because she's doing everything he does, but backwards and in heels. And so every time I feel like Everybody I know is handling full course loads, sometimes even more than full course loads, and extracurriculars and social lives and all of these things, and they're balancing perfectly and they're doing everything great. I have to remind myself that I'm doing a lot of what they're doing, but while sick, without eating, trying not to eat as many carbs, trying to be healthy diet because my doctor told me that I have to. So it's like, that's an extra thing. And also without caffeine. And so I think it is incredibly difficult for people like me who are slightly gifted to pull themselves out of a worldview of people who are on a different level and realize that they're not bad. Everyone else is just like the craziest people you've ever met. And I don't think that you realize that when you're surrounded by them all the time, because it's like, if that's your entire surroundings, that's normal. But if you get removed from that and you get to see what most people are like, because realistically, the people that I hang out with, the people that I've hung out with my entire life, are a very small set of society. Most people don't have nearly 6.0 GPAs. Most people don't take almost all AP classes. Most people don't graduate as valedictorian with an associate's. Most people don't exist at this level. But I think if you are constantly surrounded by that because you were somehow qualified for it because of 1 or 2 subjects when all these people are doing it like 17, it can feel like you are less than. But in reality, you need to understand it's a spectrum. And there's people significantly worse at these things than you. And that doesn't mean that they're bad. And that doesn't mean that they aren't worthy of everything in the world. It just means that maybe their talents aren't in the same things. And you are in a spectrum, and you need to understand that, and that needs to be talked about, that it is a spectrum, and that who you surround yourself with may not be actually normal. And I think that is something that I've really struggled to contextualize for myself because I grew up in this surrounding, believing that I was less than because I was around incredible people. And being around incredible people can be a good thing. I think it encourages you to try harder and challenge yourself, and it's good for you. But I also think that being completely surrounded by that can cause self-esteem issues and isolation and imposter syndrome and shame because you feel like you are less than because you cannot keep up with these people. That it's like feeling bad that you can't keep up with Usain Bolt and then realizing that most people can't run like Usain Bolt. They just can't. And so I think that's something that needs to be talked about, is just being able to recognize who you are around and how that affects how you see yourself. Because I think that that can be incredibly influential and damaging for people. I know it definitely has been for me. I'm still working to undo it. I mean, I just realized that this was an issue like a couple months ago. And so I've been dealing with it for probably 10 years. And so I think we need to talk about it more. We need to show it more. We need to let other people see that it's not normal. Like, that most of the population isn't like that. Especially because we talk about gifted kid burnout, but we don't talk about slightly gifted kid imposter syndrome, because nobody wants to talk about it, because then they'll know you're an imposter. I'm over it. I can't handle the same course load that my friends are. I can't be in a full 18-hour STEM course load while also be doing 3 extracurriculars, running every day, and waking up at 7 a.m. consistently. I can't. It's too much. I'm barely handling what I'm doing. And I just think that I need to give myself grace. Other people need to give themselves grace and realize that they're not alone. So yeah, lots of love. Thanks for listening to me rant.